There we are. Welcome, everyone. Woo Woo Wednesday, episode 41. The returning special guest, third week in a row, Mr. Michael Forrest with AlienCarvings.com. Welcome back, my friends.
Hey,
How are you tonight?
doing good, man. Good to see you.
Always a pleasure and always a surprise and always new treasures.
Yeah.
It's like Christmas every episode. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's been that way for like 5 years. Like my son even gets super excited when the DHL guy starts backing into the driveway. Dad, DHL's here. Yeah.
Like I could not imagine that. That's like the best ever. Like reflecting back as a child, like when my dad would come home from work, he'd like bring me like a flashlight, like on a Friday or something, like some little thing. But like ooh parts like this, it's oh man.
Yeah.
So you've got a couple new items, and you said you did get some results back today or
Yeah.
this week.
I went and had the lab XRF stuff today. We took a bunch of the pieces, like the telescope in the shot there. It's copper, mostly with zinc, and like the lens rings are a brass. They're mostly what was it zinc and something else there. And then we got these interesting metal spheres
Copper
tested.
and probably a little nickel, I believe, if it's brass.
Zinc.
Yeah, zinc,
Oh, nickel. Yeah,
copper,
yeah, yeah.
and a
The
little bit of
nickel. Yep,
nickel if it's brass
yep,
mixture usually.
yep.
So you got the metal spheres, or you got one of
Got
them? Or...
got the metal spheres. They all weigh the exact same, which is really unique. 285 grams to the dot. And there's definitely some interesting manufacturing. These were found at a much shallower depth near Tula. Tula Chico is where this was found. It has some of the similar symbology that we see on some of the pieces. As far as the test, it was 97% iron. It is magnetic, so I'm going to get an X-ray done and see if there's anything on the inside of it. Could be a shell or casing. The fact that it's that pure of iron, this age, I was like, well, that's really interesting. A lot of the star maps and stuff are showing 1000 BC up to like 500 AD. And so in that era, it's definitely common to have iron, and it's definitely possible. We have found iron in some of the other inlays, but not in pure form like this. So I don't know.
Right.
It could be a
So
it could be a false flag. It might be something of genuine. We just have to research it at this point.
exactly, and that you actually take the money and the effort and the time to figure out and make sure that each artifact gets tested, and you when you get fakes, like you state it, and then when you get real results, you also state it, and more often than not. They're genuine, but something that is like that much iron, like you're saying, it's a little bit out suspicious with no rust on it and stuff, but it is a little bit of an alloy. So who knows? But yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Unlikely, unlikely. And then the fact that it was like in the like 1 foot depth. It was before all the other pieces. It was even before the pre-Hispanic pieces came out. So they have
Yeah,
different levels when they dig down, and a lot of the videos they don't show the whole thing from start to finish because, disrupting pre-Hispanic parts is big, big no-no, and so documenting that is big, big, big no-no, and they try to leave them all placed. They don't ever mess with them. I've tried to get pictures of bodies and funerary stuff, but they just won't share it out of respect, and I can't really argue that. In this case, with the new discovery, though, we do have all the footage, and I got to see all that for one of the first times ever. And we're working on editing that now. The two gentlemen who came out, their faces were shown, and they worked for the INAH. So it's really, at this point, it's already out. But to put pre-Hispanic pieces in there is going to be of question. And so we're hoping that the INAH comes and assumes responsibility and takes admission for this and starts to do research on it, which in that case, then everything's
Then you
hunky
won't
dory,
be able
you know.
to buy any more going
It,
forward, right?
I don't care, man. I really, I would love to honestly donate majority of this to a museum and just be done with it. To be honest, I've had an amazing ride and learned so much from this. And if they say it's real, then my job is definitely complete. I mean, I'm a collector at heart. Don't get me wrong. It's a possession at the best, and the demiurge tempting me with all of this. But that's how you overcome the seven seals, is you have to be willing to just give it all up for the right reasons. And I think that that's part of this whole process, possibly.
Absolutely. And it's funny, right? That it's like, oh, pre-Columbian or pre-Spanish and it's illegal. But then the things that are coming up from below that, no, that's fake, so you're still
Has to
allowed.
be fake, right? I know, bro. That's it kills me inside. It really, when I heard all this, it just don't set with me, you know, especially when these Toltec natives are sitting there literally on their last stand, as they've been called, liars, criminals, hoaxers, all of the, even Giorgio Tsoukalos came out on social media publicly and claimed that we claim that everything from Mexico that's been documented here is a complete hoax. He said it with 100% certainty, even with zero evidence published. When I asked him if he had any evidence on his social media, he blocked me. I ended up having to file IP claims against the guy, and I hope he brings his receipts to the table when we have a debate, if we ever get to that point. I openly challenge him at this point.
Right? And that's what makes your case so amazing is that you're like, yeah, legally challenge me. I have all of my receipts, I have all of the tests, love to get it actually in court, and then also have to get the opposition's discovery and disclosure. And it's like, oh, these are just your opinions. Okay, you have no evidence behind it, sort of
And
thing.
that's just it. He's got a BA in sportscasting. So, I mean, the fact that guy's even telling us our history in the first place is, you know, obviously he's a cue card reader, because he doesn't have the authority or the academia to claim any of this stuff. I mean, that's completely. I showed this information to some of the other researchers who have put out TV shows as well as books on this topic, because it's not just me that Scott, or that Giorgio is discrediting. I mean, it's Klaus Dona, it's Scott Walter, it's Nassim Harriman, it's Oleg Elastrov, a PhD. I mean, he's going against so many researchers here by saying this is 100% a hoax. And he also came out and said the Boogosphere is also 100% a pure hoax. And so it's really interesting to see this opposition coming from this Prometheus CEO, or shareholder, majority stakeholder, whatever he is. Um, why would this? Why would he do that with 100% certainty, unless there was something that maybe that they're not wanting to talk about?
Right? It's an uncomfortable truth that they can't really delve into it. Kind of goes against
Something.
their narrative or something, right?
It actually doesn't. It goes right with their narrative, so much to the point where this should be the creme de, you know, whatever. I mean, this has UFOs, aliens, it's ancient. I mean, that's the title of their show.
Right? Ancient aliens, and here you are actually pulling them out of the ground. I
Yeah,
guess
I just
maybe
don't get it.
it could be because you're the only one, I guess, or this is the only
No,
site
I
that's
took this
pulling
to them
evidence.
first. I took this to them
Yeah,
years ago. I worked with Linda Moulton Howe, remember? We that was when I first started coming on your show. I was working with her on the daily basis. We were getting somewhere, and then all of a sudden it just got. She completely just ghosted me. Never talked to her again until Contact in the Desert just last year. And she looked really excited to see me. She wanted to have me on Earth Files. I've got the email documentation from her, and I gave her my books while I was there, and she told me to write out to her when we got back, and I've wrote out many times and never heard anything back. So it's
strange,
weird.
right?
Yeah, it's
It's like they're just not allowed to touch it or something.
right. And so what's interesting is you look at like Travis Taylor. who is on Skinwalker Ranch, and he was on Skinwalker Ranch for years. And the way that Brandon Fugel, he commented in the Sean Ryan interview that the reason he hired him was because the network said that he would be a good fit for his show. And then 2 or 3 years into the show, it came out that Travis was vetted through ATIP and was working for the government simultaneously while working for Brandon Fugel on Skinwalker Ranch. And so that's a really interesting infiltration. And Brandon swears up and down that he really appreciates him and holds no grudge, etc. So I'm not trying to claim it in that direction, but it is interesting that we have a vetted ATIP person working on Ancient Aliens and Skinwalker Ranch. And they have this type of neglect towards this topic, just like the government does. The government refuses to come out to these sites. The INH coming to town was the first time, and they wanted to come to the site not to do research. It was to look for the people.
Right? Like that's it's very, very curious and uh it's breaking all of the norms, right? From all of the different communities and government sources and authorities, right?
Yeah.
Um, have you had any developments from the Peruvian mummies that you purchased and that were, I guess, annexed from you, or?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, we paid a lot of money for these two mummies. We got pictures of them. They ended up getting seized at the DHL port in Lima. They showed them on the X-ray, which is really interesting. I have all this and I've documented it on a couple of our documentaries on our YouTube channel. However, um, so later on, it came out that those were utilized by the Peruvian government to deem all of them as fake, and those were actually not real ones that we bought. And so, um, it's a funny story that because now Jaime Maussan is filing a lawsuit against the Peruvian government for $300 million for defamation, and it comes back to this that they declared this based off of these dolls that were seized rather than the ones that were being researched by the Inkari Institute. And so, fast forward here, like 7, 8 months ago, there was a gentleman who was granted rights to go into the not the Inkari, but the Institute of Ica, or the University of Ica, rather. And that's who rescued these bodies now. And so the Inkari Institute gave the University of Ica all these specimens to study and start to understand. And so diacoms have started coming out over the last 3 months on tridactyls.org. And you can get all the diacoms of all these beings. It goes deep, and I mean deep. If you haven't seen it, highly encourage it. Obviously, these things are not fake. That the university is doing this level of scans and all this type of stuff, and it's just blowing people away. They are registering as reptilian beings. That's the final verdict so far, and um, so it goes hand in hand. And the 1850 years old, it goes right there with the dates of a lot of these tablets that we're seeing, as well as the star maps in that same era. Um, and so it's really an interesting correlation to think what might have been going on here, a couple thousand years ago.
That really is, and I have not seen that yet. So definitely we got to plan an episode just covering that because mind-blowing stuff and
Yeah.
how the dates are matching a lot of your artifacts.
Yeah. And not all of them though. So we have pieces from Abuelos de Jalisco, which clearly are older. We have pipe resin and all these dates there at 12 to 25,000 years old. And what's really interesting is the time frames here. You look at the ancient stories and how there was certain transitions and rifts. At one point, God walked with man, like Zepteki era or whatever they called it in Egypt, and then the golden era in the Greek. So you have all these different periods where God walked with man, and then God doesn't walk with man. Old kingdoms, new kingdoms. Um, I think there's something there, honestly. There's a variation in the species and the time period, and we see it with the Abuelos artifacts. The Abuelos artifacts depict a lot of the similar things, but they're not near as worshipy. They're not near as dark, and so we think that the Anunnaki are who were in dominant control in the Tula area, and it could be a previous version before these wars, or these, brothers had these fights, or some sort of something changed at some point. I'm not going to say what story it is, but there's a lot of them that, shit went and hit the fan. So yeah, Saturnarian
Absolutely.
stuff. Dusty, you're right. I just saw that comment, and it's Saturn on all these pieces. You look at the Romans with their worship of Saturn and Saturnalia, and then you look at the story of the Demiurge and placing Saturn into that role, and you look at Kronos's behavior and how Kronos would eat his own children, and at one point he had to throw them up, and so could it have been that inside the Demiurge or inside of Saturn is this universe that we're in, and in reality, when he coughed those gods up, maybe that's the no longer the Zepteki era. I don't know,
Right?
but just something
No,
that
I
came into my mind of weirdness, because we're trapped in the demiurge has trapped our souls, is what it says in some of these ancient texts, and so how exactly that happens is bizarre, obviously, but there's something possibly
something
to
to
that. Yeah.
and how much of the different ancient legends correlate into what you're finding. And I'm very, very fascinated about the pre like Younger Dryas catastrophe sort of time
Yeah.
artifacts compared to the 1800 to 2000, which is also the time of Christ, supposedly, right? So that's
Well, no, it's
also very
after the death,
right?
so
But
that's
like
like 300
around that,
AD.
yeah.
But
But just
but if you look at the Mormon religion, Christ is supposed to have made a second coming in the Americas. That's what they believe in, and we find evidence of it. I'll show you. I think you've probably seen this once before, but we find this type of stuff, and not even just with one cross, but there's a lot of depictions of Lady Guadalupe. There's a lot of depictions of different genetic type things going on at this period, and also there's some with three crosses on a hill, which is interesting with the whole Elijah and Jesus and Moses thing. So um could it be that the Mormons are right on that? They
right.
did find Egyptian tablets supposedly in the Americas. They all these things that they've talked about, it does have similarities in some regards to what we find in Tula.
It's
I'm far
right.
from
I mean,
Mormon. I'm not trying to say that, but
yeah.
they might have some of this part of this story correctly. And the way that he translated that, it almost seemed kind of a cult, like he was using
Oh,
weird monocles and
hundred
stuff. And
percent. 100%.
so he could have been manipulated with, just like we are now, getting 80% truth and 20% bullshit. And I got to thinking about that. Like we see that type of even with this story that this non-chook dragon guy, he made this story stating that all the digs came out of Guatemala, that our findings, he took our videos and said they were out of Guatemala, and then that's where Giorgio originally posted from. He said that these digs out of Guatemala aren't true, and
You're
so it's
like,
really
yeah,
interesting how the
because
story
they're
just
from
gets twisted,
Mexico.
right,
You're right, yeah.
by these
Um,
content creators that have all these followings of all things. And that's the bizarre part. Like he has all these followings, and he puts a fake body in there, and shows this stuff. And that's really for what,
it's super sus to say the
And and
least.
even more sus is Sharon Stone verified account on her story, fucking the Nanchuk Dragon video of it out of Guatemala.
I don't know if I'm aware of that one.
Yeah, I have screenshots of it. Of her sharing it at least, and then you can check his profile. It'll be there at least for the next soon. I mean, I filed intellectual property reports against him too, so those hopefully will be taken down soon. He's got like 10 million views on it on both TikTok and Instagram, which isn't as much as we have, but ours are over
Oh,
40 million now.
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You want to show off your newest arrival there?
Yeah, you guys
And
got to check this out. This is kind of crazy here because this is really great evidence to me. Um, this is Jade,
oh,
Guatemala, and I mean this thing is very massive. It's about 18,000 grams, leafed in gold. It's completely hollow in there. You can,
18
oops, sorry,
kilograms.
you can see all the way through there. But I mean, jade is not an inexpensive item. So yeah, quite interesting. This is one of the plates we had tested here. I'm gonna hold it up to the light so you can maybe see the scaling in the patina. Yeah, you can see the rainbowing and stuff there.
Fascinating. Yep.
That there is not something that they can manufacture. The guy at the lab where we got the X-rays done, he said in like 60 years, he's got hearing aids and he's definitely probably 70 years old and maybe late 60s or something. And he said he's never seen nothing like that in terms of patina. What's also interesting is we get pieces like this, and people are like, well, if this is copper, it would have a lot more patina on it. It only has a little bit here and there. However, it's got these manganese deposits, which is interesting. But I was
That
reading,
is.
and if you look at the dig sites there in Tula, Tula is surrounded by volcanoes. The big one there is the Zikuku, um, and so there's a lot of volcanic ash. And I was reading about volcanic ash and preservation, like over in what is that there, Pompeii and
Yeah.
um, Vesuvius. And yeah, the ash preserves and stops oxidation almost completely in some cases. And so that could be why we have such a variance in oxidation based on where it's found and how deep. And
Just fascinating stuff. So that was inside the box that the boat came on, and those
yeah,
are copper brass ish mixed.
yep, copper and brass. Like look at the oops. Oh, there we go. It's always backwards, but it's even got like a little divot alien head out of there.
What? And always the eye too, it seems.
Oh yeah. Oops. I'd show you what it looks like through there, but good luck getting the camera through there yet. And this thing, let me see if I can kill this light real quick.
More glow.
Oh man, the boat just glows. Yeah.
Wow.
Pretty crazy.
That is. Have you checked inside if it glows or the
I
top?
haven't yet. Let me see here.
And again, it's like
It's heavy.
the term of the shining ones. Oh, they do
Yeah.
on the copper too. That's oh wow. That
The
orange
king really
pigment.
grows.
It's just insane. Is that like a
Yeah.
white glow in the eyes of like the orange red skull? What? Oh, and that the king. Wow.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah. Turn this light back on here.
I don't believe all, but a lot of them do, correct? Have the
Yeah, not all of them, but yeah, a majority definitely do. And it's to the point too where, we're starting to maybe figure out why. Um, if you look at things like all these pieces from Abuelos, let me grab one to show an example here. So this is an Abuelos piece. You can see it looks a lot different. And these pieces have the phosphorescence as well. And it's in almost all of them.
really
And
so
eh, eh, not the luminescence. So that green glow like this is
yeah.
luminescence. So don't let that confuse you with phosphorescence. Phosphorescence is when I turn the black light off, it flashes back at you for just a split second. And So that phosphorescence, we learned that covalent bonds actually create this phosphorescence. So in certain types of concrete, etc. Um, yeah, whoever just said that the pyramid blocks are a mixture of concrete, you're right on the money here, and I think we're about to prove it. Um, yeah, that's I didn't know it was proven. I would love to see that if you could possibly reach out to us with that reference of where that's proven. All right, I'll just try to research it. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're leading to is that these limestone boxes are actually created. That's how they're getting these boxes so form fitted. It's not sitting there chipping it away. It's not, there's no, I mean, if you were to try to make this today out of a solid piece of limestone, it would be extremely hard. And so to be able to form it and make these type of things, it makes so much more sense of what they were doing. And so that's why all these things have this glow. And you can even see this in certain sites like down there in Cusco, like the big walls with the massive blocks. If you bring one of these UV beasts down there, you'll be in for a treat. So likely
You
a
need to
lot of
do
these, and you look at Tikal and Chichen Itza, they're all made with these stucco blocks. We know factually they were casting, the Mayans were casting, they claimed, or whatever. So whoever made those pyramids had advanced casting knowledge. And what did they call the stucco? Quick lime, right?
that.
And
Really?
so that's a funny thing because it's limestone that's quick, and they were able to get it where they didn't have to fire it for as long as probably the slow lime. The slow lime's probably what we're finding in Tula. And that's why it looks like real limestone. But when you look at it, like when Saram did its analysis on our piece, they said it had zero any sort of what was it, calcite matrix erosion that they could see visibly with the scanning electron scope. And so that there was no that in there. Well, for 10,000-year-old limestone, it should have that. But if it was something fabricated, 1,500 or 2,000 years ago or whatever, it wouldn't have that because of the younger Dryas impact or whatever happened. They can see those certain geological occurrences that happen in the rock, and this was absence of that. So that's also a good concept that it wasn't, produced by the Earth.
Right. And even just so the question, have you checked for radiation or Geiger counters?
Yeah, they
But
do emit a low frequency radiation with electromagnetic frequencies. This could also be a byproduct of the covalent bond, as well as what the phosphorescence is doing. There's also pieces in Egypt that do the same thing, and so we're thinking like these vases and some of these Durite statues may have been made in this same casting technique. Maybe something that was lost, into the Zepteki era. Maybe it was something only the gods could bless or do. Who knows? I mean, it's hard to say where the secret recipe of the stone went to, but we do know that they were pretty advanced back then. So
yeah, and it brings up like you first mentioned the shining ones, and like there's all the Coptic Christian and like Eastern Orthodox paintings with like the halos around everyone, and then there's a very similar style, but it's like more of red glow on lots of the Islamic ones. I've noticed radiation
yes.
coming out of like radiance, and then
Have
of
you read
course
the book of Ezekiel?
I have not yet. I
Okay.
desperately need to. I'm behind
This
on
one
that.
is pretty crazy. It's not even that long, but it talks about what the Elohim looked like, and he had this encounter with these Elohim and saw this chariot going through the sky. Where it's kind of what inspired Eric von Donigen's early work, Chariot of the Gods. And this this thing talks about in there what these Elohim looked like, and he said they had four wings, they were on fire, and one of them had the head of a man, one of them had the head of a lion, one of them had the head of a bull, and the other one was the head of something else. Nonetheless, we have these depictions. I'm going to switch over to this and show you. We have these beings with the let's see here. Oops, it's on this side. We have the lion head here, and then obviously these beings with the four wings all over the place. They look like the Anunnaki. We have those obviously in Iraq and Turkey as well. And we even have this, which is the rings within the rings, which is what Ezekiel describes. So, I
Right?
mean, all of this is like straight out of Ezekiel when you look at it into that respect, and or obviously these scorpion-headed men were something that Ishtar summoned to guard her or to protect her, I guess. So it's really it's interesting to see how far they took these stories. I mean, these stories are just not something that everybody goes out there and reads as especially in Mexico. One thing I learned about Mexico is they didn't just have the internet and full on education like we have here in America or whatnot, in terms of access as early as we did. And so it wasn't until, you know, into the 2000s before they really started getting the grips on some of this ancient history, and I mean still to this day it's not common knowledge down there in terms of Anunnaki stories and Egyptian stories. So for them to see this out of the ground, a lot of them just didn't put it together.
Right. And just the amount of proto languages and symbols and everything, like the accuracy of it, and what's like the results you've been getting from the AI inputs and from
Yeah.
linguistics specialists you contacted, right?
There's a really exciting, yeah, we've talked to numerous language experts, and no one can translate it, don't get me wrong, and even the AI is just, it's just guessing at this point. However, they announced a new Grok 3.5, and that's really interesting. It's going to be able to create answers that are not known, so it'll actually be able to conclude new formulations of ideas and thoughts, and we should have that in the next like week or two, I believe. Elon set up this thing a couple few
That
days ago. So
that sounds like AIG or AGI, artificial
next level
general
for sure.
intelligence.
Yeah.
But right, 3.5, not the full four. We're still keeping it caged, but
Yeah. Yeah.
that's interesting.
It's
That
promising though, and I think what we're seeing is we've probably looked at probably 800, 900 artifacts now. We've built long threads. In fact, I did an AI video that I put 200 artifacts in and asked it a lot of questions about it, and then had it create a 5,000 word script that I put into the AI video generator and just had it generate a video, and then I switched out the pictures with my own and published it. So a lot of people are kind of
nice.
confused. They're like, this is made by AI. I'm like, it is, but it's actually pretty interesting of how the AI generated it and what we put into it to get it to that point, And I think that's kind of how you can use AI for benefit is utilizing your own knowledge and intelligence to then, it's like having a million TAs being able to go to work for you as a professor if you want it to be.
Absolutely. No, I quite enjoy the more I use it, and still very cautious with it, but
Yeah.
at the same time, for specific, well, a lot of different specific tasks, it's quite the assistant for sure.
Yep. When you start backtracking it and making sure and double checking, it's like that's the thing. Like I think our position is to be like the teacher now, and the AI would be like the student. And so we have to go grade its papers. We have to make sure it's saying stuff correctly. And if it's not, you have to do something about it. Otherwise, the kid's going to grow up to be 20 years old and spelling there with an I when it's actually supposed to be with an E or whatever. Like those are just little things that can go so under the cracks. And I think AI is going to be the same thing. So yeah, don't let it make you be lazy. And I think that's really the key. Now they're allowing the conversations. It's not just your one thread that it pulls from. Now all my conversations are pulled together, which I almost didn't want. It gave me this message the other day because we had specific things with just Tula, specific things with the Whalos. Now it's all just a big pool of stuff. So
Really interesting.
yeah.
Well, maybe at least they'll be able to like compare them, or yeah, would that make it easier or harder for to compare them against each other? It's like,
Well, I think for each model itself, you compare the models against each other rather than comparing what the AI knows itself. Because like if you compare Claude, Grok, and Chat GPT right now with the same artifact, and it gives you the word watchers on all three of them, probably pretty accurate. I mean, that's a pretty great rule of authenticity, considering you can ask it to tell you how it got there, and it gives you a detailed explanation.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, the watch, right? So,
We've seen
um,
luminaries, watchers, and that they speak words of fire come up on dozens of these things. And what's crazy about the fire letters out of Tibet, or the Hebrew letters, that's what the ancient texts are, is the fire letters. That's why all those Hebrew have the fire symbols coming off of them, because that was the fire letters of the gods. That's why the Hebrew language is so
yeah,
accepted.
the language before Babel, right? The
Maybe it could be one that made it through. I mean, who knows, right? Like that whole era is just manipulated in propaganda that's probably way above our pay grade. It seems like, anyways.
for sure.
Some
So,
big
um,
strings.
do you mind maybe just giving us a little reference of comparing a few of the artifacts from like the different time periods and
Yeah,
showing
it's a great question.
the languages that are on them there, the inscription differences?
Yeah, absolutely. And it varies too, in terms of piece. Like these are all from Tula here. You can see this almost looks like cuneiform. Oops. However, it's all jumbled up and in
Proto.
a form that it's, yeah, either a proto version of it or something of that nature, just a different version. Enki, it's talked about in these texts that he utilized these languages and created one-offs of them to fool his brother Enlil, so they couldn't spy or something of that nature. And so, like what you said earlier, how there's these different time periods, and so obviously all of this is from the same area. It's all found within a mile square radius. So I think that's really important to know, because when you get further away in Tula, you're going to find different looking things. Let me see if I can find some examples here. Um,
So before you move on,
Here
do
you
you
go.
have
Yeah.
that star map that you were just showing with the last artifacts dated, or what were
Yeah.
the dates of these ones?
Yeah, like this one here was between 1800 and 2500 BC. This one
Okay,
here,
before.
I'm not gonna flip it around, but it's another one, and it was about it was really interesting because it had the Pleiades in a fashion that it said it was able to tell within a small window that it was about 1,000 years BC, because of the Pleiades were rising in this eastern sky or something like that. It stated. Um, we have other ones here, like on the back of this large tablet, and it came back at about 3,200 BC. So it's bizarre to see all these different star maps have different dates. What they were trying to get across at that time is still unknown. But this is the due north symbol, or the C is what they use for the due north. So you can kind of, just put that in and ask the
Fascinating.
AI. As long as you point the AI to north, it knows how to detect the dates. That was the big missing component that we didn't do in the early days, where I think we probably could have got answers on this a little bit easier. And so then, obviously we've got these pieces from Awelos, and these have been dated and still show similar things with the eye and the wings, the dual um, the angel wings, or the double wings like this here. That's something that we see on a ton of these pieces. And so this could be 10,000 years apart, or something of that nature. Yet but they're very different design techniques, very different properties, but the depictions are all the same when you break it down, except the languages are far different.
Right?
um,
That's a huge, crucial
let
part.
me see
So,
if I got a language piece here that I can show you. So a lot more of the calendar and stuff from Abuelos. Here's some of the language here that you can see.
Right? Like that's the straight up alien style one that was depicted on the original Nassim and Klaus
Yeah,
Donna pieces too.
yeah, and it could be very early on, like this guy. Oh, let's see where's he at here. Oh yeah, right there. Everything's backwards, so if I'm moving around horribly, I apologize. But you can
All
see the
good.
three finger, which is like the Nazca mummy here. And you see a lot of really interesting things with creation and Saturn. There's a planet that looks like Jupiter. Uh, there's
Absolutely
a
with
planet
the
here by Jupiter that's being destroyed, which if you're familiar with the Tiamat
yep,
story, that's interesting.
absolutely.
And
Right.
then
And
here
is
you've got
that
all
what
these.
caused the Younger Dryas catastrophe event, possibly? Like, is that
I think it could be. I mean, definitely has a plausibility, or just fragments of it could have caused our moon to come into orbit, or all kinds of things, right? Nobody really
absolutely?
knows. So then we have these pieces from Tula here. And these pieces have a very different sort of inscription on them. A lot of them are leafed in gold. And if you know the Anunnaki stories, you know they were after the gold. And so we think that these might be maybe a period before the Anunnaki, or in a period before that they took the oath against God, before the fall of Babel, I guess. That might be a better way to put it, because you see everything
Fascinating.
coexisting here in a way. You see like this type of things with the brothers. You see a lot of star maps, but it's almost like it's futuristic. And the green pieces, there's some of them that have come out, these tablets that literally have things that look like the Space Needle on them. And it made me think of Men in Black. It's like these movies, oh, they seem to be inspired from something.
So we've got questions if you've tested these artifacts for reflections in the mirror. And then that's also got me, yeah, with that guy, with your
Yeah,
flat
yeah, I've
like
tested it. We can
this.
I can show you here. They're around. They do have reflections. They definitely don't cause water to boil. I've put the pine cones in water. I've done all those things that some of these videos show. I didn't have any fancy results. I did, however, find they emit EMF, and that's about it.
That's
Um,
pretty huge though.
it is. It's absolutely huge, considering the ones in Egypt do the same. That's a common unknown fact about the Egyptian artifacts. Not all of them do, but many of them do, and some of them the handlers couldn't even like they have to handle them in waves because they can be too overbearing to the body. And I found that to be true with these at some point as well when I first got them. I don't know if it was because they were in circumference of the pyramid or whatnot. They seem to lose that charge over time. These pieces I'm showing right now are from Guerrero, and they're a way different design. You can see very similar, and they have the same type of carving as those green statues do, but yet the type of art and the depictions are different. And so what we've learned from the Mikokan tribe is that their area was a breeding ground. And if you look at this is the orgy sphere. It's got a bunch of aliens getting busy on it. It is graphic and not safe for work, just in case you're you know afraid of that. But we find this to be extremely important because of this type of genetic experimentation that was occurring, that they claimed it was occurring there. And we see so many of the depictions of how deep this really went. And yeah, it's deep. So that's it could be multiple different um, time periods that have been tested in this area. That might be why we have all these different native tribes. We have lots of different Native Americans. We have different tribes up in Canada, all the way up to the North Pole, all the way down to the South Pole. And there's thousands and thousands of different tribes. Well, I don't know about thousands. I'm not going to say that because I don't know that for sure. But there are, it seems like, thousands of tribes in this world, and there's a lot of them. And that being said, I think that is good evidence, because where did these tribes get their agricultural knowledge? They all claim it came from the gods. And you go over to Mesopotamia, the Anunnaki brought the agriculture, Enki specifically. So we see footsteps of Enki. We've got depictions of Enki. Same with many of these people, or beings.
Right? Like,
As far as sound frequencies, Rico, I haven't had anything jump out. I have modular synthesizers, analog digital synths, wavetables, all that type of stuff. I've tried many different formulas, obviously tuning to solfeggio and working in those type of frequencies, because all the whistles are tuned there. So I'll often tune to one of the whistle tones and just try to see and play along with it. It's pretty interesting. They were definitely very into music, but as far as
so
any
did you just
activations or anything, no.
did you just say some of the whistles were tuned to solfeggio frequencies?
Yeah, they're all based off of the 532. That's like the middle of it or whatnot. But
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, all of these have. You can hear it.
that's wild.
Yeah, so they knew. There's seven tones in the original, and I mean, there's so much in terms of chakra and other references here, that I definitely feel that they were keen to this.
Um, while we're on the flute subject, do you have one of the uh, crystal skull flutes around by chance?
Yeah,
Because
I think so.
and these
Somewhere. Oh
also,
yeah.
or were you able to
Yeah, oh
test
yeah,
these?
these are tuned too. And
Wow.
that's a great. I mean, you look at this. I mean, it's a large boulder. It's insane that this would be in tune, let alone a whistle carved out. So, but if they had made it like clay, it would make total sense, right?
Right? So that one's more of the stone, but then you also have a couple that were like the straight crystals that were
Oh
also,
yeah, I don't have those out. No.
right?
I've only
Oh,
got the one whistle that's quartz. We have a skull one down in Texas. I've never gotten to play it yet though. But when I do the Forbidden Relics Volume 3, I'm gonna go down to Texas and photo all that stuff. So I'll be posting a lot of content then, probably January, February time.
amazing. And yeah, I believe a couple of the Mark quartz that
Yep,
fills.
yep. Quite a few
Um,
different materials actually, but it all seems like geopol except the quartz. And the quartz, they may have had a way of growing it or something of that too, because some of these
molding it
crystal
or something.
skulls are just, I mean, I'll grab this
Yeah,
one here and show you.
are you they some of them close by to show off those? It's, collection is just so mind-blowingly wild.
Which this is a known crop circle. We found crop circles on many of these pieces.
Interesting.
And this has another language as well. And that's why I think that some of these might be really old and these might be the original creator type pieces.
Yeah.
Whereas then it broke down into the Abuelos where the Anunnaki started to do their stuff. And um,
Do,
who,
do you
who knows,
mind
right?
zooming in a little bit more on
Yeah.
those symbols? Because they
Yeah, of
almost look
course.
like some of the petroglyphs that are around, as well as it's so fascinating.
Yeah, and the dragonfly too, I think is one that might be I want to say it might be one of the Nazca lines or something like that, if I recall.
Just so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, these are really special. And so these obviously look a lot different than, let me see here. I'll take this one for an example. carving's way different. It's done differently. Obviously, this is deeper and it's way different. And so that's where we come off
Mine
saying that
goes
maybe
here.
that's a different time period because it's just very bizarre.
So crazy. Saturn. And always the disc-shaped UFOs, too.
Maybe
Sitting in
check
the
it out.
yogic position.
Yeah,
What?
with the bird. Quite a bit of detail. This type of stone here is really special too. I don't know if you can see it very well, but
Yeah,
I haven't been able to identify it yet. I'm not sure what it is. Pretty cool though.
absolutely.
And this one here, you can clearly see the pine cones with the Anunnakis picking them off of the tree of life, which
Wow.
exemplifies their purpose as a
Sorry, can you
seed pod.
move it a little bit over to the middle of there? Yes, there we go. Thank you. The light was blocking it. Now I can perfectly see. And that is not a pine tree they're picking it off of.
No, that's the tree of
It
life
is.
for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this skull's documented coming out as well. And it's a pretty special one because of that, in my opinion. I mean, the fact that it shows them picking that off of there, and that they may have carried those around inside of those bags, and that might have been their seed pods in which they produced life with the tree of life. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Absolutely. And is it like technology sort of tree too, potentially?
Yeah. You look at the Holy Sephiroth and Kundalini knowledge and stuff like the Kybalion, and it's there's probably truth in there somewhere or something. This is a pretty unique skull here. It's a black marble.
Wow.
Sorry, the
And
glare is horrible.
are there even scarab beetles in Mexico?
That's a great question. It's not onyx, it's black marble, actually. I had it tested. And black marble is pretty common down there. And we haven't found any onyx, believe it or not. It's either obsidian, black marble, but I haven't had anything tested as onyx yet.
And so those were all different types of crystals, rocks, minerals. Did get some I don't know if you still have them on you or sent them away, but you got the pictures of those actual some sort of skulls.
Yeah, yeah, I've got a couple of them here
It's
still.
like the bone ones.
Yep,
Okay,
the bone ones.
scarab beetles, aka dung beetles, lots of different types all over the world. So yeah, look at the
Which, I mean, it seems like a cross section of a cow in most cases, but it's still quite interesting. The cow was a very sacred, sacred, sacred animal to Egypt as well as obviously to these guys. And so it could have been something of a piece of idol worship or something that they did with these things to make them in that shape, or they sawed them down, or we really don't know. We don't believe it's an alien skull. They may have cut it down like that to look like an alien, however. Um, I'll show you another one here.
and you were able to get some of that bone dated, correct?
No, not yet.
No,
No.
not yet.
So we sent it off to Saram. They tried a different method. They had to resample this the first time, and they weren't able to get conclusive collagen. And so they went back a second time, and they did not get conclusive dates out of it. So They gave me my money back, which was great.
Wow.
I was
At
just
least,
shocked. I was like, wow, you guys did multiple tests and didn't charge me. That's pretty cool. But yeah, it's
or
to
did
be
they
determined.
actually
We
get at like results and just weren't allowed to and like forced to refund
so
product?
that's what we're finding out is that it's possible that some of these labs may be providing false negatives or false information to better, so they don't get flacked on, because this is a very complex topic that I'm going to shut this secondary system down here because the battery's about dead. So that's what I was doing. But yeah, I think that finding trustworthy laboratories at this point is really challenging. Even places like Cotella and these really prestigious places, it's hit and miss. So when you ask for carbon dates and certain things, it's not a very good choice. But when you look at other tests like scanning electron microscope, you can get data, I think, out of these
Oh,
labs. It's just a matter
um,
of
Mike,
attacking it the right way,
you're gonna have to unmute. I'll remove the one and unmute that. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
am I
Loud and
echoing
clear.
now? Hang on. I might
I
be able
think
to fix it here.
I think it sounds good
It's
here.
still on the other one here. There we go. All right. Does that work now?
100%.
Uh-oh. Now I can't hear you at all.
Oh,
Let
you
me
got to
see.
turn. Yep,
I see the problem.
speakers back on, and you'll be good. Yeah, we can hear you loud. He just his speakers were turned off on the
Yeah,
second.
it's I'll get it here in just one more second. How's that?
Yeah, but
Perfect.
there we go. And right, all of the supposed cow mutilations, is that potentially related to
Could be
my
genetic material harvesting. The Apsu bull, and you see the that was one of the things that Ezekiel said in the book of Ezekiel, is that one of these four-winged beings had a cow head. And if you think to Thoth, you think of Hathor, they all have these horns in Egypt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then above it's the sun disk. So in
Yeah.
some cases, but those horns, they're meant to go after the Apsu bull. So I think that's definitely a plausibility. There's a sacredness to cows here.
And potentially to all of the different anamorphic, uh, I guess, characters or gods or beings that they are. Were with wings, of course. Wow. And bird with pine cone. Bird being
Yeah. So
in
crystal ball.
constellation. Every single piece is
I,
just mind blowing.
I got this tested here today. This was one of the pieces of that he was really impressed with the patina on. And this one
Right.
here
So
was mostly
patina
copper.
or
This is
copper.
silver here, though.
That
There was
is
some
silver
silver
inlay.
meshed in there. I don't know. Obviously, if they didn't have ways of really purifying things, and I guess that makes sense. But
That's so wild.
yeah. And a lot of really good manganese deposits. That black stuff in there, if you take acetone and wipe it off, if it comes off, it's dirt, but if it doesn't come off, then it's actually the manganese deposits, which are actually deposited into the stone. And you can tell age that way because obviously if it sits in the dirt, not everything's going to get it, but if moisture collects in certain areas, you'll get those deposits.
Yeah, as well as the oxidation sometimes on
Yeah.
parts of it.
Yeah. And with that one having some silver and other stuff in there, I think that's probably where we get the mixed oxidation. And also the fact that it's mostly found in volcanic ash. So
Yeah, like it, it's so wild. So the a couple weeks ago, oh, show this first.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to show this actually. It's got a rivet in there.
What?
I know, right?
What? And look at
Um,
the oxidation on it.
oh yeah. No, they're all like all these metal pieces. I I've bought like 25 of them now because they just show it. I mean, with the rock, it's hard to tell, you know, but this is like in my opinion, really good evidence. And actually, I found out I sent you that. So after going to their lab, I went on Chat GPT and started asking questions, and I started showing it pictures of these metal specimens, asking it if it knew anything about the age or the oxidation, etc. And it gave me a wealth of information. And one of the cool things it said was, you know, obviously the rainbowing and some of these things were not something that we could do modernly, but they also can go in with a scanning electron microscope and look how deep the oxidation goes and project possible dates or eras based off of that, comparing it to other pieces in that era. So that's something that's really inexpensive to have done and should give us some good conclusivity on some of these pieces.
Absolutely. And yeah,
I'll be
to
taking
keep
those
them
receipts to Giorgio.
right. It's so ridiculous. So that it's that
I
you
love
can't
it, man. It's great. It's great because it's going to age like fine wine, and people are going to get to see that Prometheus, The Curse of Oak Island, Skinwalker Ranch, and Ancient Aliens are all just sitting there so they can get you 20 more seasons and continue. They're not teaching you anything hardly. You know, they just sit there and spin, and it's a
dino
really poor
beavers.
concept.
Dino, right? Like
Yeah, it's sad. We
it
can do so
is,
much more
but
with our minds. We can learn a lot, and for whatever reason, they're holding it back and just wait until the next commercial. You know, and it's not good.
every time. What was I bringing up? Oh yeah, so uh the pyramid that was by that sarcophagus that was
Mhm.
dug up. Has there been any more information on that? And did you receive that, or did you buy that one, or
No,
no?
they're not for sale. Those pieces
Okay,
are not for sale because there's hopes that the INAH will step in and do the right thing, and those pieces deserve to go to them.
amazing.
Um, but they need to do what's right, and they need to admit this first publicly. Otherwise, they're not going to get those pieces, and this is going to continue to go on until they do. So that's what the Toltecs told me. That's not me saying that. I'm only relaying the message.
That's awesome and amazing, and just even goes like to more credit that hey, look, they're most exquisite pieces. No, they're not trying to sell it. They're literally trying to get the government to verify, sort of
Yep.
thing. And
And and that's why all of our documentaries are free. Everything is published for free for the most part. I mean, I have books that do cost because it costs to print them, but everything else is on our website. I mean, most of the content in those books is public one way or another, whether it's a video form or something else. But nonetheless, we try to do everything and put it out there for free for this purpose too. Like we're not trying to gatekeep. We're not trying to get seasons on Gaia. We're not trying to deceive people. We are trying to be transparent with every bit of data that we have. And the moment we get it, and that's why there's not the documentary of that pyramid coming out yet, because literally we gave it to you the second it came out of the ground. I was getting texts and making the video within that same hour. And I think it's really important to do it that way because, you know, if the INAH does show up and this does get all taken, at least we have it documented that this happened. And I mean,
it
right
can't
now it's
just
a game
be
of chess, right?
Smithsonian, right? It can't just be Smithsonian away.
Right. That's happened once before, a few too many times, possibly. If this is all real, they have to know about this. Somewhere in that institution, they have to know about this because these pieces have had they've had to have crossed the plate. It's just like the end of Indiana Jones, where they put the Ark in that big room of all the boxes. You know, I'm sure there's got to be something like that at this point, knowing that
Oh,
I've got that in my
absolutely.
basement. You know,
For sure, and it just goes to add to the Burroughs artifacts and the um, like the Crespi collection that just disappeared by the Vatican, of course,
bingo. Yep.
and the in Icastones or something,
Yep.
I believe.
And I'm glad you brought those up because I was telling somebody about something today and I was thinking about this. And so obviously we have all these different like genetic experiments that occurred throughout Mexico and Central America and South America. So all these genetic experiments and so we have these weird ecostones where it shows people with dinosaurs. You know what I'm talking about? So what if they brought certain dinosaurs to try like they did with the house cat? They tried to bring man companions to help them get along in this world and help aid their creations. That's why we're so tied to the bees and stuff. You know, all this stuff was probably orchestrated by something, and that could be why there's pictures of these beings with dinosaurs at a weird time period, and we don't have fossil record of that. Because just like we're bringing the woolly mammoth back now, okay, that's not going to be in the fossil record if we go in the future 20,000 years. The ones that they brought back now likely aren't going to show up in the fossil record because we would have to know right where to dig, you know, like that's the amount of stuff that's not fossilized that gets just completely eroded or the stuff that's, you know, not found is tremendous, you know.
And not just that, though, they've also now there's some very inconvenient fossil footprints with human footprints like right next to dinosaur footprints and like over
Yes.
top of them and all sorts of stuff that eh, right, who knows. And then it's like the dragons, right? What were dragons?
Yeah.
Dragons potentially dinosaurs alive in our age, the last age sort of thing of the megafauna.
Yeah. Well,
And
if
this
the
is
Nazca
live.
mummies are reptilian, like they said, that's from the people at the University of Inca, then there's definitely a possibility. They found that fossil of that dragon that was millions of years old in China. And
Right?
I
That's
mean,
also an interesting one.
yeah, it seems pretty real to me. Yeah, and all the depictions of them all around the world. I mean, obviously we have the plumed feathered serpent in Mexico, but you know, in Japan and China and all over Asia, you have all these dragons and the yellow emperor and um, the yellow emperor story really hit home on this for me.
Do you mind telling the story a little bit more?
Yeah, yeah. The people over there were gifted all their technologies and weapons and languages and all this stuff by this yellow emperor that came and he rode around on a dragon and eventually he brewed up this cauldron, this huge stone cauldron, and brewed this thing up and he disappeared up gone. I probably butchered that story. I'm not the best with that one, but it's very interesting to me that this guy supposedly came and brought all this knowledge, and we actually find an Asian guy depicted on this limestone from Tula. So it's interesting with Quetzalcoatl and the feathered serpent, and you know, are there is
And
there a relation there possibly? I don't know, but dragons are dragons, right?
and that there's a decent amount of actual carvings around the world showing humans with dinosaurs and some paintings and stuff. And all legends have some sort of truth, so it would make a lot of sense. And then we have the legends of reptilian humanoids today, yet the DNA analysis of some of those mummies are coming back with that. You're saying that's
Yeah.
just mind
Yeah.
blowing.
And you know what's funny about this also is you have the Paracas skulls, and the Paracas skulls date around the same time as those Nazca mummies. And so what we see on these artifacts from Mexico is a coexistence of these alien-looking beings with elongated skull-looking humanoid humans. So we have both the fossils here of what's being depicted on these pieces, technically.
Exactly. And
You know,
that
I mean,
like there's still local legends, not just from the natives, but like the locals that live around today, whether it's Ogo Pogo in the Shuswap in British Columbia, Canada, or the Loch Ness monster in Scotland. It's like there's still these experiences and sightings of these
What if there's a
remnants, I
portal in
guess.
that lake? Or, you know, they say that these beings emerged from the sea. The Dogon people say that the amphibious creatures came out of the sea, and we see a lot of evidence of that. That Nessie could definitely be a real thing. You know, this is my book, Forbidden Relics here, and inside of here is this pyramid that I have. And, you know, again with the
So
reptilians, you see on the bottom of this, you've got this guy with Saturn and you know, Horus here with this house cat that sits in the middle of this thing. And you've got these two beings working on this strain of DNA. And you have Saturn here with all the planets lined up to it. So it's really bizarre. If you look at the house cat, it has very unique eyes compared to every other feline on the planet, almost as if it had been genetically modified somehow, because it has eyes that
got
allow
the
it to
reptile.
hunt.
It's got like the
Reptilian
reptile
eyes.
eyes.
Bingo. So that might be indirect evidence that the house cat was created as a hunter at nighttime for mice, rodents, etc., to help keep us, you know, to help keep us where we're at in survival. And you look at the importance of the house cat in that respect, and it's huge. You know. Same with the dog. The dog came from somewhere. It wasn't just, you know, wolf to hundreds and hundreds of different breeds. I think that there was, you know, that Chow came from here and it has a black tongue and no one knows where it came from and, you know, certain things like that. The temple protectors, specifically like the Chow and Sharpei, are really interesting lineages and how far back they go and how mysterious their arrival is, essentially.
Fascinating, Joel.
Yeah,
That's amazing
that
lineage.
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, and see, I like to hear stories like that because it's, you know, you look at what's been canceled out there, and that's what they're afraid of. At this point, Giorgio coming out and saying all this is a hoax is really a clue that, okay, so these topics that they're saying are a hoax with no evidence. We've seen it time and time again with different celebrities. You know, there's rumors on the TikTok about Michael Jackson and, you know, all these type of celebrities that were basically turned on by the industry saying this and saying that, but never proven, and that's really bizarre. So it's almost like the things that they're afraid of, they smear and create false information stories about them. And if that's the case, then just look at all these things that are like the Book of Mormon and Mormonism specifically, Jehovah's Witness, all these religions that are outcasted specifically. The Coptics, the Gnostics back in the day, early Christians were persecuted out of there. You know, then they had the run with the Jews. I mean, they literally stripped down the authentic bloodlines of all of these religions and seemed to kind of come into control of them somehow.
Right? And yeah, it is
It's
all
been a war.
it's just it's all covered in what's depicted in your artifacts that is the uncomfortable truth, but it's where the evidence seems to be leading, and it's
Yeah.
being dug up all around the world, and it just now they can't hide it any further. And uh, that we're blessed that you've been able to get this sort of collection and documentation going and getting the testing done.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm
I
so
see.
thankful. Yeah.
I see behind you a couple of figurines that are, I guess, human looking, or are
Yeah,
they?
here I'll bust this one out real quick. This one is really iconic, actually. Don't sneeze, you know. So this here is I think really pinnacle. She's got the cow horns.
Fascinating. It both looks a bit Egyptian, but it looks even more
Oh,
uh,
it's Egyptian.
definitely Egyptian now, seeing the symbols and what else is depicted. But the woman herself, the headgear and dressing looks very, very similar to a lot of the Crespi golden tablet depictions.
Right. Yeah, it definitely has a more uh pre-Hispanic style to it, just like Lady Guadalupe in comparison to Mary. um you see this comparison, and it's close, but it's not the same. And
And
just like that pendant I showed you with the cross earlier, it's close, but it's not the same. And so there's something there. And so, if there was a second coming here, maybe he looked differently. Maybe he took a different form. Obviously, these gods, if they came into this universe, the material world, and is different avatars, like Thoth is said to have changed bodies numerous times. Well, if that's the case, then maybe maybe it's a different form or something after the resurrection. Who knows? Obviously, we're in a whole new pay grade of type of thinking here, but
oh, but very true, right? Cube supposedly came back as Hermes Trismegistus and someone else, and was in more of a human form at that point. And so many of the former demigods characters and the legends of these anthropomorphs that right, that during the pre Younger Dryas, if it was the Tiamat that still existed only 12,000 years ago or so, and that it was the fourth planet, Mars was a moon around it. That's pretty close to Earth, and that would make a lot of sense of where did they go? Oh, their planet got destroyed, and
right.
why? What the implications? It's fat. Just blows my mind thinking about
Well,
it.
and if Thoth was so high with Atlantis, it's possible it all started in the sea. Maybe that's where they could survive. They picked this planet because their planet was destroyed or something of this nature, and this was where they resided afterwards. They started in the waters, and then just like the Dogon people said, the amphibians came out of the water, and that might be, what we see here, and it would make a lot of sense, you know.
And yes, for the chat, I don't deny that there is only one like creation creator God overall. When I use the term like demigods, it's the small g, and it's that we are essentially now equal with them, and that would be why humanity essentially has now gotten its freedom from them and the technology that could destroy, I would imagine. And yeah, it's like why I say demigod is if they are responsible for genetically interfering, have a part, like they didn't create life itself, but they might have influenced and created part of humanity or something like that.
Yeah, life as we know it. So there's eternal life and light beings and that sort of thing. And then we have biological life here in the material world. And I think that is a different thing. Like people say there's an afterlife, right? So we have our life and then we have an afterlife. So the afterlife is the actual life, and this is a material realm created to entrap us here in a false reality. And that's the demiurge, or the guise of the demiurge. So when you have the demigod, those are the creations of the demiurge, just like the archons were created, or just like Tiamat rised up all these beings. And I'm not saying that Tiamat was the demiurge. However, when you look at Tiamat and Apsu, and then you look at the story of Saturn and his wife, obviously the sexes are backwards, but there is a couples type therapy here that may fit the bill for this story to bridge across these different cultures, And you look at this is heavy, so you're in luck tonight. So this here, I believe, is the aspect of the source, and its rays of light that come out and feed the material world and the other things, and then inevitably come to our gland, and that's where we have the direct link to God. But yet there's
The
this
third eye to
there's
the
this bridge here as well, and that's kind of where it talks like it's kind of how Jesus talks, and after Ishtar, or after Easter, when he resurrected. So before that, this might have been the only path, but then he came in and said, in order to get to him, you have to come through me instead. if you remember that in the Bible. And so that might be where this was changed around and modified, and why we don't have this type of curation on this planet. You know, it says that man inherited the earth, and that might be the point where we inherited the earth, and Jesus gave us the divine spark or the direct connection ourselves, to where we didn't have to go through the pyramid temples to get our faith.
Our direct sovereignty,
Yeah.
each soul having its own sovereign connection to creation and eternal equality, essentially, is how I would see it, and kind of do. And
Yeah, I mean, I'm not any religion, but that just kind of fits with me in terms of how you just said that, like I feel that, like it would make sense to me, you know. Obviously, a lot of people are religious, and there's a lot of people toting this story, and I think a lot of it probably is accurate. But again, if this is true that we're in this false reality of the demiurge, then we should definitely listen to the Bible, where it says to use discernment, and think that that might all just be a comfort zone, to keep us here.
absolutely, and the aspects of the whole soul trap system that it's also incorporated into a lot of esoteric and occult knowledge and philosophy and
Yeah.
Scientology, even. Right?
Scientology is a big one. That Eyes Wide Shut. You ever seen that movie?
Oh yes,
Okay, so
I
you
need
know about
to.
Kubrick getting off from that,
Yeah,
supposedly?
I've heard about that. I've heard about that.
So he was trying to expose the Hollywood elites, and in that movie, it has people with the Thoth ibis nose and all these weird costumes and stuff. Very esoteric. It clicks right in with all this. And so, if you go back to Aleister Crowley's religion, Aleister Crowley was over in Egypt, and he saw an alien in the Temple of Horus. He's the one that first drew the very first gray ever, and he came back with all this knowledge and esoteric information, and started doing practices in the desert down there, and had Walt Disney and all these different people. But L. Ron Hubbard was a main person in Aleister Crowley's religion. So likely Scientology could have stemmed from that, and Scientology could be the elite society that we're actually seeing being depicted in Eyes Wide Shut, and that might be why he got, you know.
Right, it's not illogical. It's ah man, there's so much to it, and
Yeah.
it gets creepy. It's Holly weird for sure, and it's
It
like
might be why it's still disclosure, and what this might be disclosure. It might not be that they're from aliens, from UFOs, from different planets per se. It might be that they've been on this planet since they're, whatever, or it could be something much rooted deeper than what they're trying to sell us on.
right,
What did
and
they say about the Holy Spirit there?
uh,
Uh, yeah, I definitely think, it says the Holy Spirit's always by your side, and this story of the Sophia being the direct thought of God creating the demiurge, and falling to Satan because she was young and confused, uh, would definitely fall into that, because she's the wisdom, right? Sophia means wisdom. And so the Holy Spirit is always by your side. That wisdom and the inheritance of it, I think, is hand in hand there. That's what you're saying.
and it it it's just there's so much to it. There's so many different rabbit holes to go down and connect to it all. And is it that why nobody will touch your artifacts with a 10-meter pole? Because it's what Holly Weird knows, and that the occult possibly already knows and practices, and they're trying to prevent that truth from getting out potentially.
Right. So if there is a guise of the demiurge, right, and there's this age old saying, the truth shall set you free. So if we've been in this entrapment and that's the truth that will set us free, and knowing all of this origin and knowing this story will give us, seeing these pieces specifically out of Mexico, if they tried to Project Blue beam us right now, and these beings with the elongated skulls showed up on our planet, there's 40 million people that saw that dig out of Mexico. Like there's going to be people who are aware that they've seen this before. And so their trick, the Project Blue Beam, to try to convince all these people might not be as effective. And that might be what they're truly afraid of here as well, is if we're going to ruin the surprise by bringing these beings out before they do.
Exactly, and it's good. They're trying. It was always stated they were going to try to do that fake alien invasion as like the final enemy and all of that. That
Yep.
essentially you're exposing, well, these artifacts expose any sort of potential psyop. And it
Yeah.
also brings up an interesting point that I've been pondering a lot lately about UFO sightings, and that up until like Roswell, and even I guess like decade or two after, it was mostly only disc-shaped craft that were seen. And then from all of the like private conversations and like backroom chats of a lot of the people I've talked through with APEC and that were in the military, the Air Force, and stuff that had exposure
Hmm.
to it, claiming that they were shot down around the Roswell time and stuff, and that we developed technology to bring them down. And that's the
Yep.
only sort of UFOs that we're seeing, but they're being depicted in like half or three quarters of majority of your artifacts, and no other craft that.
That's not true. That's not
Oh,
true.
not
There's
true.
lots of other
Okay.
craft. Yeah. No, we
Interesting.
we check this
Okay.
out.
Do
I
show,
mean, this is
please.
this is like straight out of Skinwalker. They did this artist rendering of this sphere that flew through, and I mean, this clearly is a sphere. It's got a astronaut inside here with
Interesting.
a
Okay,
helmet and
so an
everything.
orb.
I mean,
The plasma orb. Okay.
a little ruby on the back.
What?
So there's that. I've got three different orbs, and obviously, I think I showed you that whistle here last time. That's like the yeah, make the it's right here. Actually, I can show you. Might not have shown you this. I've been on quite a few podcasts this last week, so it's hard for me to remember who I showed what to. So I apologize if I didn't.
No
But
worries. Yes, you did. And
yeah, so this is a different
right.
type of craft, I mean, this is enterprise stuff. We do find a lot of different crafts in Awelos, more so in Awelos, but you also see
Before
these
you run off with
orbs.
that one, Mike,
Yep,
do you mind
yep,
bringing it back, and just showing any of the hieroglyphs or the
yeah.
language on any of the ships?
The
Just
inside of it's really the interesting part. It's actually got like a control panel. You can see the guy piloting it.
elongated cone head, of course.
Yeah, with quite the facial expression. I mean, it's definitely, you know. So, and this is a whistle.
Interesting. Heard some
Last
of
one's a
that.
little high pitched, but yeah,
Wild. A straight flute too.
yeah. So, a lot to learn, but I think we're getting somewhere. I think
Oh
that this
yeah.
whole geopolymer thing is gonna lead to some answers because there's certain things that just don't add up with how these things were constructed. And there's this other stone too. Let's see if I have something close by here. No, I can show you with this. And the guys all down there, they call it blue jade. And but I've seen whistles carved out of this material. And I actually sent some into GIA to get it certified, but I believe this is a geopolymer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
because it glows red, it has a phosphorescence to it, and some of the pieces like the skull whistles, you've seen that one skull whistle where it's half actually
Yeah, the half and half
the
that.
half and half one. Yeah,
Yeah,
so that's definitely a good role model, possibly a good one to test at least.
for sure. Is that one close at hand, or that one's in
Yep.
your
No, it's
night?
over here in space, right?
And that one is, I believe, is that same blue half
It's
of
half that blue and then
and the
half this black stone.
blacks. Okay.
But you can even see here, like this has been cut uh, to form this, so it used to, the fact they got it all hollowed out and
Oh, the sound cancellation is blocking the
my
sound, is
bad.
what it is.
Yeah, these
Okay.
headphones are great for that. Yeah, but it sounds really great. But see, doing this type of carving where it's all embossed like this, I think is really a good piece of evidence too that it was probably glued together at some point. But it would make sense if you took two stones and formed it and did that and then stuck them together, that it would be easier. What's interesting though is I don't find any seams present on some of these others. So
And that they're tuned to the solfeggio of 532, I think you said.
within that scale, so the scale obviously goes up. Each note's different. Some of them will be a F sharp starting, so it'll be the six whatever. I don't know all the frequency numbers off my head, but
And still, it's like the amount of engineering going into being able to carve that acoustic properties into that
yeah.
skull
And
is.
not crack it or break it, and then also go and tattoo it with all these embossings and carvings as well. What are you gonna and do all the surface work first before you tune it, or are you gonna tune it first? Both seem ridiculous. So
Yeah, that's like perplexing, right? And because I was
definitely
thinking, like, if it
masters.
was just a mold, that would be the easiest way, obviously, like geopolymering into a mold that has that acoustic frequency put in. But like you said, the carvings and stuff that actually does affect the overall frequency of it. So it's like what? That's the
Yeah.
complexity is immense.
Yeah. Well, it's just like these steel balls. They all weigh 285, yet all of them have unique amounts of holes and lines and stuff. So whoever constructed these, even if it was a hoax, went to the effort of making sure all of them weighed down to the ground, which is bizarre. I mean, because it's got so many unique carvings, you would think they would be one, or at least a point one or point four off from each other, but that was not the case at all. Like right on the money.
Right. Yeah.
and
That's
and and it's not I always test this because we've got these limestone boxes where they had these stone balls inside of them, these crystal balls, and every crystal ball weighed spot on the same 1,000 grams to the T, like a kilo, right on the money. Which they were made out of different stones, like, but they were all specifically that size. And this is like 5 or 6 different boxes that were found.
yeah, it's
Why
very,
would
very
someone go through that,
fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Um, the megalithic or the megalithic yard. Have you heard of the megalithic yard? So
Mm-mm.
it's I'm gonna have to look up the specific measurement of it, but look this up, and it's a specific measurement that all the megaliths are apparently made by, and they've dubbed
Oh,
it the megalithic yard. And compare to see if any of your artifacts are scalable in that megalithic yard,
yeah.
and that would add another level of potential verification or authenticity.
Yeah. Yep. And that too, I think is a big factor to be able to find out what math system they use. Because I'll show you on this. on the star map here, you can see all these these hash marks and stuff. We believe that those are numbers, likely, coordinates or measurements of something. So, seeing all those different numbers. Well, what's interesting is the ancient Mesopotamian math system was, I think, a 20 points system, and the Mayans had a larger math system than what we do. We have 10 digits in ours, and they had more digits essentially. So when you're breaking out these math formulas, like to build a pyramid or whatever, their intricacy on this had a lot more digit potential, so that I think they could get much more finite in terms of their measurements because of this.
Very interesting aspect. And I just had the thought of how the Babylonian or something was in the 6 digit or 12 digit system, and that also there's lots of the supposed giants with 6 fingers and 6 toes,
Yeah,
and we count on our fingers to 10. Were they counting their fingers to 12, and that's why they were in that base 12 system?
yeah,
Something to ponder on,
yep. It would make sense to me for
right?
sure.
Like,
Yeah.
that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got about 20 minutes left here. Any other big updates or stuff that you're working on or coming up?
Yeah, we've got a really great presentation I'm preparing for in July at the Total Disclosure Now conference. This Total Disclosure Now conference is really something I'm looking forward to. The gentleman, Brian Sang, that's throwing it, he got behind us 100%. He saw what Giorgio did to us and actually made a statement publicly against it. And so he's got a really great group of speakers. Trevor Grassi, the guy with the SAR scans there in Egypt, is going to be there. And he actually came out and made a big statement too, um, explaining that this is something that we need to look at very closely, and it needs more research based on what he saw and what I've shown him. And yeah, the Total Disclosure Now is down in Florida. It's in Tampa, July. I think it's the 14th through the 17th, 15th through the 17th, something like that. But yeah, really looking forward. I'll be on a panel there. There's a bunch of crystal skull experts. We have a bunch of people that are going to be down there who have put their hands in the dirt, have had their own experiences. There's multiple researchers from Abuelos and from Tula that are going to be present there, giving presentations and showing artifacts. There'll probably be, hundreds of artifacts there, I would imagine, between all of us. And I'm going to bring some really special pieces down, let people handle them, and touch a crystal skull or blow in one of these whistles, just so it's really important to feel it yourself and to understand just what kind of ridiculousness it is.
For sure. That's amazing. So you're actually getting together with some of the actual people that were doing the digs there.
Well, no,
No,
no, not the guys down there doing the digs, but actual people, for instance, like Sean Bond and USADA. They are good friends with a gentleman named Gustavo, and Gustavo has a museum with Abuelos pieces and is very, very deep with the Abuelos culture. And he's given me a lot of information and research. We've been friends for a couple of years now, and then he knew these guys in Mexico City, Sean and Isara, and they invited her, or they invited them to go to Tula. He had a friend in Tula that asked him to come there to check out the digs, and that friend in Tula was actually a guy that I work with very closely. It's the son of the grandfather in Tula. So small world, these guys were going there, and they ended up finding some ridiculous pieces and got it all documented. It's posted on our Instagram here a while back, but it's really cool to have unbiased people you've never met before go down there and have this type of an experience. And there's crystal skull experts that are going to be there too, like Josh Shapiro and stuff who studied Amy and Einstein and all these authentic skulls. And so we've reached out to a lot of these people to try to get opinions and understand what we're dealing with, and to see if it's legitimate or not. And Yeah, he's been an extreme help. So I think it's going to be a great synergy of people, and the moderators are going to have their hands full getting good questions across for sure.
Absolutely. Which brings you remind me of a question I wanted to ask earlier. With the crystal skulls that you have in your possession, have you ever experienced any sort of like paranormal or telekinetic or psychic or anything of the sorts? Nope.
Nope.
Oh, fair enough.
I saw maybe a UFO when I was young, maybe 5 or 6 years old, seven at the most. Out our window, I was sitting in the front room on the couch, and I looked out the window and I saw some weird lights in the sky, and then they were gone, and never had anything ever happened ever since then. My mom, though, after I started this, she had a weird experience when she was pregnant with me, where she was completely paralyzed with this bright light that happened right before she went to bed, and next thing she knew, she woke up the next morning. But that's about the extent of anything in our family. Like, I've talked to many people, and no one's really had anything crazy.
Well, hopefully it stays that way and
I'm
you
not
don't
complaining.
have,
Yeah.
right? Like, last thing you need is a ship showing up or a portal opening or something crawling out of the ground. Who knows?
Yeah.
But, like, with all of the elongated skull being depictions and the cover up of the genetic coding of them from all of like the labs and tests, yet the original work, rest in peace, the soul of Lloyd Pye, and then the continued work with L.A.
Brian.
Mandula and especially Brian Forrester,
Yeah.
that is like it's the truth is coming out and the information is slowly making it, but uh,
They're
yeah, just
they're
there's
they're
more and
trolling with
more.
us. They're trolling us along with, oh yeah, the truth's coming. Come on. Like, it feels like that though, because it's like underneath the Sphinx's paw. JJ Hertog and Robert Schock and that team back in the, I think it was late 90s, early 2000s, came up with GPR scans that there was something under these paws. Yet nobody's been able to dig there yet. No one's been able to do a core sample, and even further GPR testing was pretty much prohibited by the government there. So yeah, again, I think it's kind of like a trolling process where we're just being yeah, it's like the Epstein list. Exactly. There's just some of these things I don't think we're gonna get, or
And
or that they're trying to not get it to us.
and it brings up, and we have to ask the question that like if these are legitimate, like if the actual other beings exist and like that they're still got to be around somewhere, and is it even humans that are covering this up and interfering and making things disappear, or are they just making sure they're covering up and hiding their own existence and evidence of them to this day potentially?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the Illuminati, and people have come out in music and certain statements talking about people eating children and trafficking children for this purpose and stuff. And I'm not trying to get too far off on the conspiracy side of things here, but there is one thing of interest of obviously the sacrificial firstborns from back in the day, and also this eternal life business and the promises of the demiurge, or the ability to stay in this reincarnation with a good life after a good life after a good life for being a real jerk. Some of these people might be sold out to the devil to do this type of work, or sold out somehow in this process of maybe just to their own weaknesses, or their own temptation, I should say. But nonetheless, there could be people who are trying to stay in this realm, and if the truth sets us free, then everything they've worked for, everything is done. Like, this is done. We're moving on from this. Like, all this is done. And so I think maybe there's people that are just that attached to the physicality, or that sold out to where they're pushing for this free, just to troll us along.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it the evidence of the elongated skull bloodline, and that it was the pharaohs and kings and like monarchs of the past. And then the rumors that, like someone was saying in the comments earlier, the Rothschilds still are like a little coneheady, and like there's the Pope hats and all of that and stuff. That
Yep.
there could still be potential very diluted but existing remaining fractional bloodlines from these original ones that they probably are majority human today or just like us, but that they have a little bit of it left or are still enslaved to it.
You're not supposed to touch the monarchy for a reason.
Right? Like the famous picture of Trump being like, new to the queen or whatever, like just turns
That's the
around and is
first
like,
thing that came to my mind. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
right? Like,
But they're happy to have him back here again, it sounds like. So it's an interesting relationship. Their crest is the red dragon over there in England, and that red dragon obviously is interesting symbology in the Bible, and they're very into biblical stuff. In fact, even at some of their events and things like they have the bowls and the babble and all this type of stuff that they still heavily dance around. Today. Like this was just a year or two ago that I see these type of things unfolding. Believe it was at the Jubilee of the Queen, but when she was still alive. That's an interesting thing. The Jubilee is something worth researching if you haven't.
I have not, and I'm gonna have to
I'm
look
not going to
in.
go off on it because I don't know
Yep,
enough about it, but it's something worth researching. Yeah.
fair and interesting, and it always creeps in the back of my mind, like the Princess Diana like leaked audio of her going off stating all these parallel David Icke conspiracies, and it was like I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure she died before the time of David Icke speaking publicly about these things. No, like
Yeah.
so from a
Where did she get
timeline,
that
like
info?
exactly where did she come up with these ideas?
And why was she chased down so hard by the paparazzi, which is the Hollywood, right? They're the ones that were terrorizing her, and they're the ones that were doing this. And you start looking at these people who are paid in Hollywood by these tabloids and to push these stars. It's an interesting concept as well because it's almost like the police of the upper Hollywood elite is the paparazzi in some cases.
Yeah, that's a good point. And oh, it, we're gonna
Yeah.
have to just keep going into it because it's wild. The evidence keeps coming out and adding up, and that you keep pursuing the truth and keep putting the money into it and to get things tested, to get as much information as possible, whether it's the languages, the inscriptions, getting things dated chemically, or the processes of the stone and the actual material sciences. You're doing it all.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I tried so hard to pass the buck to somebody on this one. I reached out to every person that I could think of that would have anything to do with this, thinking this is the last thing I want to be doing. Really, like I'm not educated on any of these topics. So the fact that if you want it done right, you have to do it yourself. That old saying, that might go hand in hand with this. And I think, with my books, I've done all the photos, I've done all the publishing, I wrote them all. Like doing this process yourself gives you the ability to chase the truth. Whereas if you sign off and sell it to somebody else, then they're now pulling the strings. They're now your investor. They're the ones making the calls. You take someone like Nassim Harriman. He was passionately doing research on this, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like he's gone. Well, the guy's a genius. He's an astrophysicist, and he has knowledge about zero point energy that I mean, he's likely going to come up with some stuff that's going to change the world. And so that's where he's called to. And that's why there's not existing research going on. When he heard about my books and stuff, this is what I was told. I don't know this personally, but he was very excited to see this work and this research, and gave good kudos for this. So I think in the root of it, a lot of people want to be pushing to the truth. They just can't for whatever
Well,
reason,
and they're working on their own projects of truth and disclosure, and
Right.
that's literally how we're going to get it. Is it's all coming out at once, and everybody's playing their role and doing their piece.
Takes a team. It really truly does. All of us, doesn't matter what you do, where you're from, how much money you make, what you believe in. Like, we all have a job here to do our part, and everything seems to happen for a reason.
Yes,
So
you are. Yes,
to go
you are.
against that, it was like, you know,
All right.
yeah.
Well, we got a few minutes left. Do you want to show off your great works of the books that people can purchase it,
I'm gonna show
regardless,
this other one too.
right? And it's a
This one.
great conversation piece around the coffee table, the dinner table, and hopefully it doesn't lead to like physical fights and like whether family people, some believe, some don't, but it's a good debate and it's beautiful artwork
I
regardless.
want to say that too is I've come across people of all religions. I mean, the number one city of to watch my video out of the 15 million views is Tehran, Iran. So it's all over, it's everybody on this one, and this book here, Anunnaki, the Egyptian, or the Atlantis Mesoamerica connection, rather. It goes into detail about the Nazca mummies and some of the things that we found, in terms of, we found this being here out of the limestone, and obviously it looks very similar in terms of the eyes and how these beings are put together. So we see a lot of that type of occurrence. We've got all the digs and different things, chessboards being found. So this goes really hard into the excavation and the comparisons between the other places in South America, and then this book here is Forbidden Relics, which is just kind of like my own baby. It's my entire collection, as of December of 2024. I've gotten a lot of new pieces since then, but it's 400 pages. It goes through deep, deep macro photos and things that you could really just sit there and stare at for some time, because there's a lot of information. And what's really cool about this book is I did this one on Kindle. It was my very first one on Kindle that was with my pictures in it. And boy, being able to zoom in on a tablet and see those pictures and really see the carvings and stuff like that, you're not going to get that out of the book. So it's something of encouragement to look at as well.
And just amazing work. And you've been dedicated to it. It all started with a bet with your friend and some intrigue, and uh, freaking love it. And for those that are sold, I believe you still have some original pieces for sale, as well as that you do make and publicly state and sell some replicas of like the nicer
Don't
pieces.
sell any replicas anymore.
Nope, no, you
I made
stopped
up a
that completely.
bunch. I
Okay.
made a bunch for the event, and it's just too confusing. I just don't want to
I
confuse
like
people like,
that
oh,
you
you're the ones making these. Like, it's just not good. Not everybody gets it, and if you don't have time to give your spiel to someone, they might see it and just discredit you right out the gate. And I saw that at my booth, and so I stopped. I actually started doing some CNC wood burning here with engraving and putting some of these designs of the artifacts with all the symbols on wood. That way, I can have something to help fund research and do this, but also give people the ability to have a memento of these pieces. We do still sell a few original pieces on eBay. I do have people that I've built collections for. So if you're interested in building a collection or putting these things together, there are a lot of pieces that are coming out that are still legal to purchase. And so this window of bringing these in and researching is probably shrinking by the day. And so I think that's where a lot of these investors right now are looking at this, is we want to build museums and try to get this, concreted in multiple different places. And been working with the Mohawk tribe over in on the East Coast, and they have some land over there as well as a financier that's through the tribe, and they want to possibly buy a large portion of these pieces from me, and put them in a museum on their land, because then they are technically found in North America, and that gives them the right to hold them. And I love that idea. So
That's amazing.
yeah.
And that's awesome. And I'm glad to hear that like the replica thing, because it's like it was cool, but it did add so much confusion. And just for the record, it's like the replicas you were making were like plastic or poly
Yeah,
or
just
whatever
resin. Yeah, yeah,
resin, right? And then it's like all the actual artifacts are straight crystal, straight freaking
yeah,
minerals and rock and aged metal that's being pulled out of the ground that you're getting and analyzed everywhere, the levels of patina, of
yeah.
oxidization, and that you have had a few different types of like chemical dating, but you found that it's more expensive yet it's like less accurate and stuff or
Well, the problem with the chemical dating and C14 specifically is a lot of the samples, like Scott Woltar did on his show, were done on the adhesives. And the problem with the adhesive is that if you scan the adhesive, molecularly and break it down, you're going to find cyanoacrylics inside of it. Therefore, like Saram, for instance, writes these artifacts off as modern, even though this red glue is far from modern, but they write it off that way because it has cyanoacrylic in there. But obviously we're finding things that make this civilization far more advanced than what we knew. And so the fact of them creating a two-part adhesive somehow is definitely not out of the question if they were putting together Tikal with blocks of
yeah,
stucco and doing this other
yeah.
type of geopol. They definitely could have done that. So the fact they're saying it's fake based on a false positive, they say, well, it's never been found before that. It's kind of like the osmium inside of the Nazca mummies. Well, these are 1800 years old, but osmium wasn't smelted till the 70s, so it's got to be fake, right? But then you look at how much osmium's inside of these things, sometimes up to 7 or 8 implants on one body, and it's 750 tons of platinum ore to be able to crush down to get that amount of osmium in that one body.
Just
Sorry.
doesn't make
Sorry,
sense.
that these false positives need to be looked at
Mike,
more
I'm
carefully.
sorry to cut you off, but we do have to cut
You're
off the
good.
stream as we are at 2 hours. Appreciate you, love you all, and we will have you back again very soon. Thank you all for joining.
You crazy mother. Yeah.